Oh, yeah. When it comes to like past trauma, past pain, and just setting boundaries, it's interesting how many people have lived their lives not knowing what they're suffering from until it just hits them right in the face and they're like, oh my God, where did that come out of?
Exactly. And, that's pretty much what happened to me. It was just one day hit me like a ton of bricks, and, here I am now. But I'm so glad that it did, because I was truly living a personal hell back in the day. But, here I am.
Was it was it like a personal hell when you're going through it, or is it like a personal hell when it's like, oh my God, looking back, did I actually go through that and survive it?
It was a personal hell in the moment going through it. I was suffering from a deep depression, and a lot of anxiety at the time, and I didn't know where all of that was coming from. In fact, I thought it was just my luck of the draw, my DNA, my chemistry. I Here I am, lucky to have depression. Um, and I sought out, medications to help with all of that. And it never worked. None of it ever worked. And I could never figure out why. And we kept trying lots of stuff. And it took a very intuitive doctor that I had never seen before, just one time, to kind of open my eyes to everything and told me that my issues were not chemical, that they were all situational. He had asked a bunch of questions about what was going on. And he said, these drugs are never going to help you because you don't have these chemical problems. What you have is a situational problem. And if you want to get over it, you have to change your circumstances.
So when you realize what you're going through, describe to us what exactly it was and when the moment in your life you reach the point where you're like, I don't want to go through this anymore.
Yeah, so I was adopted at a very early age. I had my biological mother was neglectful. And so I was removed from her and I was adopted by another family. Um, and is about 5 years old by the time that all kind of finalized. So very early age. I don't remember her much at all. Um, and I grew up with my adopted family, thinking that it's pretty normal. They loved me, they chose me. And that's kind of how they would put it. And my childhood was pretty normal for the most part, but it's when I got into my teenage years, that things started to kind of take a turn for the worse. I started having to work full time at the age of 13, to support my family because I had adults in my life who did not want to go to work. It wasn't that they couldn't, it's just they didn't want to. And so I would go to school full time and I would work 40 hours on top of it. And I did that pretty much until the age of 25. And the whole time I would be super depressed, not understanding what was going on at the time. And my mother urged me to go seek medical help and counseling. And that's when they first started putting me on the antidepressants, around the age of 13, to make me, I don't know, happy with the circumstances that we were living in, I suppose, right? Maybe a pill will make her smile going through the worst of it, right? Um, and so went till about 25 like that. In that time, I had moved in with my adopted brother, who was about 11 years older than me. And he was going to, help me out in his words. And so we got a place together. And shortly after I moved in with him, he quit his job, and there I was supporting him and my mother. And I had a son at the same time. So I'm supporting all three of them on 13.50 an hour as a pharmacy technician, and I'm getting knocks on the door, power turned off, water turned off, car repossessed, and there just wasn't enough resources, and I could not get the people in my life to step up and help. Um, and so we tried so many different medications for the depression, and there was times that my family would talk to my provider at the time, and suggest that maybe I had bipolar or I was schizophrenic or all these other mental health issues. And we tried medications for a lot of them, and none of them ever worked, and they always made the situations much worse in my mind. And so the crying and the anxiety attacks were just fueled by the medications that they were putting me on because I didn't have these issues. Um, one day while I was at work, I get a phone call from my brother that they had turned off the lights again. And followed by that, I got a phone call saying that they were going to come repossess my car. And that was the only way I had to get to work. And I ended up having a major panic attack at work. They told me to go ahead and go home, and I went into an urgent care. And that doctor in that urgent care, never seen me before, looked at the slew of medications we had tried in the past and asked me what was going on, and he confirmed everything and told me it's all situational. None of this is ever going to help you. We have to get you off of this. I'm going to talk to your doctor, and you need to make some changes in your life because you've got a lot of people taking advantage of you, and it's not right. And so he says, it's all the ball is in your court. You're going to have to do something about this. And that was the hardest part for me was, having to face these people and confront them with what this doctor had just told me all about. And then, try to come up with a plan to fix it somehow. I had no idea and I was really lost at the time.
That must have been tough for you to go through because I hear a lot of people when they're going through, let's say, a mental fitness check,
Uh-huh.
their concern has always been, I don't want to be medicated. I don't want to
Hmm.
be taking a bunch of pills. I don't want someone to tell me just to keep my chin up and everything will work out.
Yep.
For you, you went through something that maybe is like a nightmare scenario for a lot of people who
Hmm.
are contemplating, do I actually want to put my child up for adoption? Because they can go through what you went through, or you have someone that has went through the system of adoption and they're trying to recover and they don't realize how much it impacts all forms of
Hmm.
relationships,
Absolutely.
right? For you, as you were growing through your teenage years, your early adult years, what kind of
Mhm.
impact do you think that had on your relationships? Maybe romantic, maybe personal, and maybe professional.
A huge impact. And, in my early adult years, my whole attitude was about getting validation from other people in just about any way that I could, really. Um, I did not have any kind of self-love, self-worth. I didn't know what that looked like. And you have these issues of neglect that you have to deal with as well. You feel like that if you don't perform to the standards of the people that are around you, regardless of how you feel about anything, that you're going to be left alone. And that was, for some reason at the time, really terrifying to me. Now I can say that I'm okay with that. If I have to do it alone, I can, and I will be just fine. But back then, when you're a teenager and you see all of these people in your classes, they have their big families and they have their friend groups, and you just don't have any of that, and you try just about anything to kind of hold on to whatever you have at the time.
Someone once shared with me that she was going through something where she was seeking attention and validation because she was abandoned at a young age,
Mhm.
right? That was her
Yeah.
reality. And she was going through like therapy and she'd go to
Mhm.
classes for it. And she was having a real struggle. And because the validation was so strong. And it was like
Mhm.
a drug, right? Like it was
Mhm.
this euphoria. She's like, oh my God, this is better than I ever felt because she began to substitute it for maybe the healthy
Mhm.
affection and
Yeah.
compassion that she wanted. And one thing that she was doing was that she began to become very promiscuous
Mhm.
to the point where after, let's say, a coaching or mentoring session, she would set up dates
Mhm.
or meetups right after it. Like she got that bad
Mhm.
and she didn't realize it until maybe someone pointed out and said, "Hey, what you're going through is pretty destructive. Do you see it the way I see it? In the
Hmm.
beginning, Amy, she was like, oh my God, is that actually what I'm doing? Like it was like blinders were on. When you were at, let's say, your lowest point or maybe your worst behavior, were there things that you were surprised that you got caught up in doing?
Oh, absolutely. I never saw that I would be into taking any kind of drugs. Alcohol, I went down that road, absolutely for sure. And boyfriend after boyfriend, and sexual encounter after sexual encounter, back then. And I ended up, getting pregnant with my son. He's 22 years old now. But I thank God that I did get pregnant with him because that's what made that downward spiral stop for me. Now I had somebody else that I had to think about and, not just me and numbing, the pain and, thinking that I need to take these drugs or, go out and party in order to have any kind of human connection. And having him actually taught me so much more about human connection than I had ever learned, up to that point. It's very different, but you start to realize with a child that, it's not all about any of that. And it's not about making other people happy or pleased with you, or anything like that.
I look at those situations as like the canon event in your life
Yeah.
where this is where like the fork in the road.
Hmm.
Either you're going to continue on the path that you've always been on, and unfortunately, Amy, some people do,
Yep. Oh, yeah.
or you're going to say that I need to do better, I need to be better, I need to live better because it's not only for myself, it's for my son, it's for my
Hmm.
daughter, or it's for our future. And
Yep.
I've seen so many people change their life around because of those
Hmm.
events. But I wonder now, and I pose this question to you,
Yeah.
do you think if you didn't have your son, do you think that you're still able to make the changes? Or would you have continued living the life that you were living before he was born?
I think I would have continued on with what I was doing until something dramatic had happened. I needed that wake up call because I was numbing everything. I would get up and go to work, and as soon as I would get off of work, I'd hit the bar and I'd, close the bar down at 3 in the morning and have to be to work at 7 in the morning. And I would do that 6 days a week. One day to sleep it all off, on Sunday, I would sleep all day. And that was my life. And, that's exactly what I was doing. And I absolutely would have continued that until something drastic happened. And so I absolutely believe that, he was, it happened for a reason. And my family at the time did want me to have an abortion. They thought I was too young and they pushed me for that. But I made the decision on my own that it was something that I couldn't do.
Now that you have turned your life around, what boundaries have you set for yourself? And what do you think, what type of boundaries would you like to share with others to help them along the way as well?
Yeah, so now I have, I guess, created my own family now. I don't have any extended family. All that I do have are the friends in my friend groups now, and my husband and my 3 children. And that is all that I need. And if it does not align with that, it doesn't belong in my life. Other people who want to cause a lot of drama, I don't allow those people in my life or in my circle. Um, and if it's going to be detrimental in some way to what I have created, it's not going to be a part of anything. And that's the kind of boundaries that I have now. Keeping manipulative people away, keeping dramatic people away, people with ill intent, um, and just surrounding myself with strength and love and whatever it's going to take to get me to keep moving forward with my goals and my dreams and aspirations.
How important is that one about not allowing people who are dramatic, filled with chaos around
Huge,
you in your life?
huge, huge. You don't realize it um, in the moment, but those types of people who have to have drama, who have to have chaos, and I'm sure we all know somebody like that. They have the ability to completely throw your life, off road, and they're spiraling out of control in one way or another, and they're happy to take you with them. More than likely, they're not happy with their situation in life, and they have to bring other people down with them. They can't stand to see other people thriving. And if you've got somebody like that in your life, they're going to do whatever it takes to bring you down to their level and into their chaos because they've got to have a companion.
I recently had that exact conversation with someone. This must have been a few weeks ago after it was crazy, Amy. Let me
Yeah.
tell you, it was absolutely nuts,
Yep.
this person. And I shared with them this exact same thing because I mentioned it, then he blew up, and then we didn't talk for maybe 2 or 3 months, and then he messaged me, then we talked about it again. And I
Hmm.
told him that here's the concern that people who don't want that in their life, when
Hmm.
they point it out to the people who are dramatic, who are chaotic, who are toxic, immediately they not only go on the defensive, they attack,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
right? Like, and
Yep.
they attack aggressively. Like, the things that they say,
Hmm.
you wouldn't even think that they're your friend,
Right.
right? It's absolutely crazy how quickly they will turn.
Yep.
And I told him this, and then he turns around and he says, well, that's what you're there for. That's what friends are there
Mhm.
for. And I asked him, I was like, well, why would someone agree to be a friend where all they're hearing is negativity,
Yep.
complaining, and drama?
Yep.
I was like, which document did I sign?
Where's that
Agreeing to that, right? Yeah, and I was like, the problem that me personally, anecdotal, of course, that I have with people that are that way is that I strongly believe the only reason they do it is because they couldn't do it to a therapist or a coach is because they would have to pay and they
Oh,
probably can't
absolutely.
afford it. Like, what are your thoughts?
Absolutely. And I had the same experience with my brother, my adopted brother. Him and I had a very close relationship. And the minute that I started to push back against his chaos and negativity and all of that, absolutely the attitude started coming out and the blaming and the real narcissistic side of this person, just started to come out. And they have to have that going on in their lives and they want to bring you with them. And as soon as you stand up for yourself or set a boundary with them, all of a sudden you are this, terrible person. And, that's kind of your hint right there. If they can't, um, stick to the boundaries that you've set up and they can't understand where you're coming from and wanting to, not have this kind of negativity in your life, they can't understand that, then absolutely they need to go kick rocks or something. Because they're just going to bring you completely down with them. And you know, it was the toughest thing I had to do because I did love my brother very, very much. And when I grew up and he was, we were very close when I was growing up. And so the fact that he would do this kind of stuff to me, it was very heartbreaking. And, you would think the same thing about some very close friends. We had a lot of good memories together. And the minute that you push back and it's not all about them and it's not all about what they want to do and it's not all about their life, um, they just really have no use for you at that point, and as soon as I did that, um, this was 15 years ago and we've spoken 3 times in 15 years and he won't call me anymore. So it just goes to show you, how much, I kind of really meant to him or, even you meant to your friend, by the amount of contact or times that they try to reach back out to you? Were you really that important to them to begin with?
That's a question that I think everyone has to ask themselves. It's
Yeah.
like the first moment you say that, okay, you can't continue to treat me this way because one part of self-love is
Mhm.
to love yourself,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
That's the whole purpose of it. So if someone is bringing stress, anxiety, and everything else into your life,
Mhm.
if you would approach it from that perspective and say, "Hey, this is your impact on my life," you would
Mhm.
think that if the person cared about you, they would understand and say, "You know what? I am doing that."
Mhm.
But from their perspective, it seems they immediately get rid of you, and you're sitting back, you're like, "Wow, I
Mhm.
allowed this person to do all of this in my life. As soon as I stand up for myself, I'm removed."
Yep.
Right? How did that make you feel realizing that you, from your perspective, you built up this relationship that was really good in your mind, but as soon
Mhm.
as you want to make some changes, it was like literally, nope, it's
Yeah.
all or nothing.
It was really heartbreaking. And, the thing that broke my heart the most about it was the fact that before I even moved in with my brother, I had family come at me and tell me not to do it. And they shared stories of different times that he manipulated and, financially ruined some other people in the family. And they begged me not to go and move in with him and do any of this. But in my mind, I thought, this is my brother. We have a really good relationship. He would never do this to me. And that, famous last words, he would never do this to me, right? And that's usually, the one that hurts the most is the one that we never really saw coming. Um, but once I was able to break free from him and understand exactly who he was and understand that everything, before was just smoke and mirrors, lies, nothing true, nothing authentic in our relationship. None of it ever was. Um, I started to get a lot more self-love for myself. And that's where the self-love for myself actually started, was when I was able to confront him and get him out of my life. And then I was able to say, okay, if I could do that, I'm pretty much unstoppable at this point. And at that point, I was able to start attracting the right people into my life. The minute that I started to look inwards and have the self-love and, develop the self-preservation and the understanding that, it was nothing that I did wrong or anything like that. That's just who he was. Then I started attracting the right people in my life and I could bounce back from all of this and heal and move forward.
When you started to attract the right people in your life,
Mhm.
how did your perspective look when you're trying to analyze who's going to be in your life today versus who's not going to be in your life compared to what you saw yesterday?
So it was really easy, actually, for me to tell the difference, who was going to be a good person for my life and who was going to be a negative influence in my life. Um, Number one, I had from my brother to pull from. And, number two, I knew exactly from their willingness to help me out when I needed it. When I was down, the people that were there building me back up, the constructive criticism versus destructive criticism and, the coming from the heart conversations and the willingness to be there for me and then me for them as well. It was never a one-sided relationship like it had always been in the past with other people and my brother in my life. Everything was always about the other person, with those kind of relationships. But when it's reciprocal with, whoever it is, you've got a good person in your life. They're helping you, you're helping them, and there is no judgment between you.
Was that easy for you to accept knowing that there are so many people in your life that you're going to have to leave behind and move forward just so you can start to love yourself the way that you feel that you deserve to be loved?
is very difficult. It wasn't easy. I had to do a lot of studying and a lot of research and a lot of reflection about, just about every person in my life I had reflected on. And I had looked for, what were the warning signs that I had missed? What were the red flags? Where had these people used me in the past? And then more importantly, what were my weaknesses that they were exploiting? And I needed to understand that. And I needed to understand the manipulation. And I needed to understand the narcissism and, the dark psychology. So I went down the road of really looking into all of that, dark psychology and the darker side of people because I had to have that understanding so that I could figure it out for myself and move forward and get to a point that I could trust myself that I was picking the right people to be in my life. And that was huge, getting to where I could trust myself with the decisions that I was making.
Describe to me a period of time where you couldn't trust your judgment or maybe your actions, and you look back and you're like, I can't believe I got caught up in that situation.
Yes, when I first got out of high school, I thought I had it all figured out. I had, left my home and went out on my own as an adult and thought that I had a good friend group. But we were just a bunch of little stoners and nobody had any kind of aspirations in life. We were all working at Taco Bell and that was kind of our MO. And looking back on that situation, I ended up getting married at a very early age and getting caught up in that whole scenario. I thought that they had accepted me and these were my people. And then it was just one day I started looking around at, some of the older people in the group in their 30s and 40s. Here I am in my early 20s. And I'm like, oh my God, that's going to be me. If I stay here and I continue working this Taco Bell job, I don't get educated and I continue to smoke pot all day long from the minute I wake up to the minute I go to bed and then, polish it off with a 12 pack of beer at the end of the night. That's exactly what I'm going to be. And I don't want that for myself. Um, and so that situation right there, that was, it was actually pretty easy for me to get out of that one. But that's when I moved into, the bad situation with my brother as well. He had presented himself in a way that he was going to rescue me from, this bad decision that I had made. We make them when we're young and, get involved with the wrong people. But he had taken advantage of the fact that I was vulnerable and, had no direction at the time. Had I had a little bit more direction at the time, I think things would have worked out a little different for me for sure back then. But
In my 20s, that was a decade of struggle. Not one
yeah,
year, not 2 years, just 10 years of struggling just because I was trying to find myself and trying to figure it all out, similar to like what you said.
yeah,
And I look back on the friends that I've had during that time, and they motivated me to be better just because I didn't want to do anything. I don't want to be anything like them as I was getting older. And one thing I truly realized, and I appreciate it to this day, it put me in a position to say that terrain, no matter how close you are to someone, no matter how long you've known them, you may have to leave them behind. Are you okay with that?
mhm.
And Amy, let me tell you, that takes a lot of courage, a lot of
Oh yeah,
determination, right? And a lot of strength.
yep,
I sat with that, and as soon as I had that aha moment, it was literally like my eyes just fully open. I started to see, I was like, was I allowing this the entire time?
yep,
Was I allowing that the entire time? Is this person really this way?
yeah,
Right? And you begin to realize how, as well, how detrimental the behavior was to you. And in your teenage years, in my early 20s, we're so young and impressionable. It could
yes,
have taken us down a very different path if we allowed it to go longer. And I look back and I thank the Lord, the universe, whoever you want to thank,
Mhm.
because that was my defining moment. Now, these days, if there's
Mhm.
something that I don't have time for, energy for, or if I know that it's going to impact me negatively, I'm like, you know what? You need to keep that over there.
Just leave it. I don't need
Just
it.
leave it be. Just I
Exactly.
don't need to be. Do you find that sometimes people don't understand why you do that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. My husband has, his whole side of the family, and, they don't understand, especially, a lot of the women on that side of the family, they don't understand why I don't get involved in the pettiness and the drama and the gossiping and, the hen house kind of behaviors that, you often see from the older women in the families and whatnot, and they don't understand, and they don't get why I don't participate in it at all. And they often take offense to it, and they often see it as maybe I think I'm better than they are when it's not, that ain't it at all. They turn it around and make it about themselves and turn themselves into a victim of some sort when I just don't want to participate in the gossip and the drama and the pettiness. And, I guess I think would like to think I'm a little above all of that, but, that's what they live for. And they don't understand why I just don't do it. And so I usually end up hanging out in the garage with the guys and having a beer because they're having a good, conversation usually.
Who are
So
you, Amy, acting like you're too good for drama and gossip?
I know, right? Right. But I can't do it. I can't do it. Oh my goodness. No. And so,
No, I can't. I told someone the other day that in this is 2024 and they were
yeah,
telling me something and I said, "Can I just pause you there for a minute?" Like, "Yeah, of course." And I said, "You do realize that this is the first drama I've ever heard?" Like, "Really?" I was
yeah,
like, "Yeah, and you're bringing it to me." So, I have a choice now. Either I tell you to stop and you stop, or I remove you
yeah.
from my life, right? Because I've gone the entire year without anything. And now you're bringing it to my life because it's all that you know. And I asked the person, I was like, okay, I'm going to put it to the test right now. And I love this test. And I said, tell me something about yourself that isn't drama related. And for those who are listening to this, not seeing the video, the person just stared at me and stared at me and stared at me. I was like, before you say anything, because they're about to say something, it can't be about any celebrity. It has to be about you. And they're like, well, nothing happened. I was like, oh, so if it's not celebrity news, if it's not celebrity gossip, or if it's not average regular people gossip or drama, you have nothing going on in your life. I was like, what do you think that tells me about you?
Yep,
Right?
exactly. Exactly. They're usually pretty boring if they don't have that going on.
It's their identity, right? Versus the flip side, you and I having a conversation, we could talk about anything because
Oh yeah.
we're free of that, right? But it's not like, oh my God, Amy, do you know what happened with Johnny down the street? Do you know what happened with Ashley down there? Do you know what happened with Christina down there?
Yep.
It's like, what are you? Are you the National Enquirer? Are you like the Hollywood Reporter? Like, what is really going on? But sometimes I think that it has become their identity and they don't remember a time before they were this way. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I know so many people that are like that. And, they don't know how to get out of that. They don't know how to look at life any other way. And most of the time they're so disappointed in themselves and they may not even know it because they have nothing going on and they have to have the drama and they have to make fun of other people and their situations to make themselves feel better about their crappy situation that they have going on, or their very boring life that they have going on. And so they have to do that to, validate themselves to themselves for some reason, make them feel better at the end of the day, I guess. But yeah,
Someone told me, and I laughed, and I felt kind of bad that I laughed, but it felt so good when I was laughing, Amy. It
yeah.
felt great. They told me the story that two people broke up, and she is friends with a guy, right? It's a male and female, so she's friends with the guy. And she was telling me that these two people they broke up, and one of the friends in the peer group, not her, someone else, they began to observe the girl who's no longer the girlfriend to the guy. So I asked her, I was like, hold on. Let me understand this. So someone who's not even involved in the relationship is observing the ex-girlfriend to pay attention to her. I was like, she's taking time out of her day to do that. And when she started to laugh because now she started to realize she's like, oh my God. She's probably in like now we were exaggerating the story. She's probably in the bushes with her binoculars watching and making sure it's
Right.
like, oh my God, is she saying anything about this guy? She's doing this.
Mhm.
And that's how sometimes people who get caught up in it,
Mhm.
they don't realize how ridiculous is the behavior until they take a step back and like, oh my God, Amy, I was actually in the bushes,
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
right?
Exactly. And I've known so many people to be like that as well. And sometimes you point it out to them, they can't see it. Sometimes you do, and they realize, just how, stupid they were really being about the situation and how jealous they were about, maybe this other person in their life. And sometimes you help them out by bringing it to light, so that they can move on and go do something else, and sometimes they don't want to hear it and, they'll continue on, but what are you going to do? Just let them be
Yeah,
them.
yeah. And one thing actually you touched on when you mentioned your brother and he took advantage of your situation because he stopped working and then you ended up working. I think some people they don't see that necessarily as, let's say, manipulation
Hmm.
until things hit the fan. Let's say, for example, they end up working two jobs, or let's say their health is gone, or they're mortgaging their house, or they're borrowing all this debt. I remember there was one guy, he was in a situation and he got so caught up in it that he ended up being tens of thousands of dollars in debt.
Hmm.
And then he went to his family members for help, and they're like, "It's not our debt,"
Yeah.
even though the debt was taken on to help them. So, talk to us about manipulation and how easily we can get caught up in it because when it's our family, we're generally conditioned to say that, well, our families are family, we have to accept what they do, not knowing that, no, we have a choice. Regardless of the relationship, we don't have to accept this type of behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. In the moment, you don't recognize it as manipulation. You don't recognize it as a form of mental abuse. And in fact, I didn't even recognize it as any of that, until, maybe about 10 years ago when I started to process everything and reflect on everything. The manipulative side, I was pretty much getting onto as soon as the doctor kind of let me know that, maybe I was in this kind of a situation. And as soon as I started paying attention, to the way that he would say things and the way that, certain things were done, certain situations worked out, I was constantly told how I, was crazy and led to believe that I was crazy and that my depression was so bad I would never be able to, function as an adult on my own and that I needed him in my life to do the adult things for me. But on the other end, I was the only one working, and so at the time I couldn't see how contradictory that was, but now I do, it's like, well, how are you so stupid to believe that you can't do anything for yourself? You need these people to do everything for you, but yet you're the only one that can seem to hold down a job, and so but in that whole situation, you're conditioned, you're brainwashed into thinking, a certain way. And when they come at you with, this idea of, they're doing this out of love for you and concern for you, you really want to believe that, especially coming from where I came from and, having been adopted and dealing with the abandonment and neglect issues that I had. And I've got somebody who's looking out for me and protecting me is kind of what I felt like I was going through at the time. And he knew that and he knew how to manipulate that and he knew that was a weakness of mine. And he knew how to work that angle with me. And as soon as I started to bring some of this to light, that's when the angry, narcissistic side of him started to come out. I started questioning, a lot of the brainwashing that he was doing to me at the time. And it was more, how dare you question me? It is what I say. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm your brother. I love you, and then my mother, she was with us too, and she wasn't the manipulative one, but she very much enabled it when I tried to stand up for myself and, kick him out. She would start to cry. He's my son. You can't kick him out. And then I'd be drawn back into everything again. And so it was really difficult to figure it all out in the moment. But afterwards, that's why the reflection part is so important after you come out of a traumatic situation or an abusive situation of any kind. You have to reflect on it so that you can understand it and understand why, when, and where all of that happened so that you can not, you know, get in that position again.
Considering your upbringing and what you went through as the daughter in the family and with your family members, now that you've created your own family, how protective are you to ensure that your children's childhood isn't what you went through growing up?
Very protective, and I kind of giggle a little bit because sometimes I'm a little overprotective, and my husband has to, like, hey Amy, it's okay, calm down. We don't need to be that guarded with everything. And so sometimes I need to be reminded that maybe I'm a little too guarded with my family, and my children, and that I need to, let loose a little bit more when it comes to, ensuring that they never have to go through any kind of traumatic situations, which is what we're supposed to do as parents. But on the other end, they do have to go through, life experiences on their own. Otherwise, they're going to be overprotected and shielded and not know what to do when, they're an adult and life starts lifing like it does in your 20s, right? And so it's a delicate balance, it's a juggling act. And sometimes you just have to pray about things and see how much you're going to go ahead and put up with, and how much you're going to draw that line, that hard line, how much you're going to let them go ahead and experience, and absolutely what you're going to guard them from. And as a parent, you want to guard them from everything. But as kind of a reasonable adult, that that's not a very reasonable thing to do, because you're not preparing them the best that you can for what's going to come in life.
Some parents mention that when they have children and the parent has gone through a traumatic experience or a traumatic childhood, and they're protective, like you said, right? And rightfully so, because they want to make sure that I'm breaking the generational curse. No one is going to pass this on to my children. I remember one person telling me that they tried and they tried and they tried. And then there was something that was done in the household. Either the child did something or they did something, and they took a step back, and it triggered them because now they began to remember. It's like, oh my goodness,
Mhm.
I see my past now. Was there a moment where something happened, either behavior from you or behavior from someone in your house, where it reminded you of what you went through? Then you had to take a step back and you said, you know what? I'm going to make sure this doesn't happen because I'm starting to be reminded of something.
Yeah, when my oldest son, he's 22 now, when he was younger, um, I tried way too hard to protect him from as much as I absolutely could. Um, and on the other end, I had to work and I had to trust people to be able to watch him for me. So I could go to work as a single mom. And, there was a lot of times that, and I went through a lot of babysitters, because there was a lot of times that I would get overprotective on little things that they were doing that I thought maybe were not so good for him. One instance where I got a phone call that he had bumped his head on a pipe after pushing a truck. He didn't look up and, there he hit his head. And, here I am thinking, oh my God, it's the end of the world and you're fired and here we go. But after that, I had to, realize that okay, he's gonna get some bumps and bruises and it's gonna be okay. And, you're just gonna you'll be there for him when it does happen, but you just gotta go through and understand that, he's gonna get hurt sometimes and, you can't protect him from everything, even though you want to. And, the best thing you can do is, just kind of unfortunately allow certain things to happen, and learn to trust certain people to take care of him. And that's the hardest thing to do is allowing, that trust to come through, especially after everything that I had gone through and not trusting anybody. And so it was really difficult to get to a point that I could trust people to just kind of watch my kids for me.
Was it more difficult for you to trust others or for you to trust yourself to take a step back to allow him to be trusted?
I like to trust myself to take a step back for sure. Well, and to trust other people too. I did have a lot of trust issues, period. I did not trust that I could make a good enough decision um, in the person that was watching him. And then, also trusting the person that was going to be watching him. And there was times that I did make, a bad decision. I did have a babysitter lose my son one time, and that was, a terrible situation where they had the police looking for him. Luckily, they found him. But I ended up having to fire her that time and then, trying to find another babysitter after that. Absolutely it was really hard to trust somebody else again to watch my kid. If they are going to, allow him to run away like the first one did, you have that in the back of your mind. But you do have to at some point trust, do your diligence and, check out the references and whatnot and trust that you've done everything that you can to, be as safe as you can for your kids.
When someone is going through some difficulty with their family members, I think that it could be difficult for them to put distance between themselves and their family members, just because there's always a fear of being alone,
Mhm,
feeling loneliness.
mhm,
In your mind, you're thinking, well, they're my family. Like you begin to um, justify why you would put up with the behavior that you know is causing you
mhm,
so many negative feelings.
mhm.
When there is someone who is trying to make that first step like you did to say that I want to stand up for myself, I don't want anyone to treat me this way, what would
Mhm.
you tell them to do as a first step to continue to maybe protect themselves from those people?
So, first step is to, realize that having these kind of people in your life is doing you no good. Okay. And when you realize that and you come to terms with the fact that, they're doing more harm to you and your life than they are doing good, um, it's really easy then at that point to kind of look within and start to realize, okay, if I'm noticing that they're no good for me, there is that glimmer of self-love inside of me. It may not be very big yet, little, peak of self-worth that you've got inside of you. And when you've got that little bit, that little spark within you, that's really all that you need to kind of continue to go forward, take the next steps, and really grow that within yourself. And the more that you distance yourself from negative people, abusive people, toxic people, the more you back away from that, and the more you allow good people who are strong, who have um, dreams, who have goals. Super important that the people you let in your life have goals and they have aspirations to be more than what they are and who they are, no matter what that is. The more you allow those kind of people into your life, then you're going to start to see that, you know, you never did need those people to begin with, even if they were the only family that you had. You know, today I have zero contact with any of my past family, um, because of all of it. You know, I don't talk to them. I don't communicate with them because I know what bringing them back into my life is going to look like. They may have changed, you know, maybe, I don't know, but I'm not willing to, you know, take that chance to find out that they haven't changed and done better for themselves. And I hope that they have. I hope that they've, you know, come to grips with the issues that they have, and I hope that they did find happiness in their life and have moved on from everything. Um, and so just having that and having that self-love and just starting to establish that so that you can move forward, I think is the biggest step. You know, you don't need these people in your life and you're so much better without them. And as soon as you know, have them kick rocks, the sooner that you start, you know, attracting the right people in your life. And you can create your own family, you know, like I did. I created my own family, and it's a group of people who absolutely, you know, love me and, you know, want to see me, you know, prosper and be the greatest Amy that I can be. And, you know, that includes my kids and my husband and some friends that I've had for a while. And, you know, it doesn't include any of my family from the past. And that's okay. That's okay.
100% agree. And I tell people that the people you surround yourself with is a
Mhm.
direct reflection on yourself. So when you look in the mirror, all the bad traits of the people you keep around you are a part of you. And some
Yeah.
people say, well, that's not so true. I'm like, yeah, it is, because I give this example. There's someone out there who majority of their friends, not all, but the majority of friends are people that are chronically single, and when they get into a relationship, they cheat on their partners, right?
Yep.
Perfect. The person's like, well, that's not a reflection of me. I'm like, okay, fine, let's run with that logic. And I said that if you were to meet me and I have 10 friends, and
Hmm.
six of them are serial killers, serial murderers, and they assault people,
Hmm.
wouldn't you ask me, why am I hanging around these people?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right?
And, you know, that's one of the things that, you know, I talk a lot about, you know, in my channels and in the courses that I put together is, you know, identifying those traits in us that, you know, make us, you know, attractive to the people that we don't want to attract. And that comes through the self-reflection and that deep, you know, shadow work and looking at those parts of ourselves we don't want to look at, you know, but we have to if we, you know, want to move on and have a life full of people who are good to us, you know. But if we don't do that, then we're just going to keep attracting the same serial killers or narcissists in our lives, you know, the abusers. They see it in us and it's written on our forehead. We just can't see it.
Yes, and I love that you mentioned that, because we're attracting those people,
Mhm.
right? So it's not like there's a database, right, where they can
Right,
just pull up and they say, okay, I see Amy's name, I see Train's name. We
right.
are right, we are doing something, and that's why when you highlight that, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, the question has to be asked of themselves, what are you doing to attract these people? And as you put it, now my question to you is, why do you think so many people either are unable to answer that question, or, and I think this is probably the majority, refuse to outright look deep into themselves to answer that question?
Well, it's hard to do. It's difficult to do. A lot of us don't want to come face to face with the negative side of us. You know, we don't want to come face to face with our weaknesses. We don't want to address that. That's one of the reasons that, you know, a lot of times we, you know, go out and have a drink because we want to escape and we don't want to face the reality. We don't want to face the tough things. You know, we want to just work on the easy parts and, you know, live, laugh, love, and, you know, that's all we want to do. But if you don't look into yourself and you don't do that shadow work, you know, it's gonna leave you vulnerable, unfortunately. And that's where a lot of people just end up messing it up for themselves is they're not willing to do the work that you need to do.
Do you think maybe that some people are afraid of coming face to face with what they're going to find because deep
Oh
down they
yeah.
know the truth?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's scary to look at yourself and to reflect on your life and, recognize the patterns in your life. And look at, all the things that we've done and the things that we've said, whether out of anger or not. We don't want to relive any of that. But without the reflection and without the understanding, we can never get past it. And that's where a lot of people, just end up getting it all wrong and where they end up in these terrible depressions and these terrible relationships or the dead end job that they hate is because they're not willing to take the steps to look within themselves and look at the bad side of everything too.
There was a show, I forget the name of it, and maybe I'm getting old, Amy, that's why I can't remember the name of it. But there's a show where there's this creature, it was like an alien, it's probably some sci-fi show.
Mhm.
And what was happening was he had trauma inside of him. That was his weakness, but no one around him knew. So once once he began to project it onto others, he became stronger and stronger. And then someone realized that their trauma was not only a source of their strength when it came to attacking people, but it was
Yep.
also a source of their weakness. So when the person began to feel, this creature, sorry, began to feel their pain and their suffering, because now they're embracing it, now they can't escape it, they began to get weaker and weaker, and then people can overcome them. And I wonder, even though it's just a show, I wonder if you were to take that and extract it, I wonder how many people who are, let's say, the most aggressive,
Mhm.
the most straightforward. I wonder if you were to break it down or break them down and be like, okay, I see something here. This is a sense of insecurity. That's
Oh
why
yeah.
you're lashing out. That's why you want to be manipulative. That's why you want to be controlling. That's
Oh
why
yeah.
you're a narcissist. Because if you get found out,
Hmm.
you don't want to deal with people thinking that you're a fraud or
Yep.
something else. What are
Oh,
your thoughts?
absolutely. Absolutely. That's a thing with a lot of these kind of people. Especially the ones that, like you were saying, act out in, super aggressiveness and anger and the hostility and the yelling and, just that front that they put on in the name of not appearing weak or looking strong. They are really deep inside extremely weak. They don't know how to handle their own emotions. They don't know how to process their pains and traumas. And so that is the way that they guard themselves is, by absolutely projecting it on somebody else. And, when you finally get somebody to realize that and look within themselves and that anger goes away, you start to see that they do have a lot more peace and, they can be really loving and, not angry anymore. And so I think a lot of the anger issues do come from, that past trauma. And yeah.
So, I mean, as we close, what advice do you want to give to our audience out there who maybe are going through it and now they just realize, oh my God, I'm deep in it and I
Mhm.
need help to escape?
First thing is to absolutely recognize that you are in a situation that is not sustainable, that you do have to get out of. Um, and start planning, be strategic about your escape from a situation and make sure that, you do have a support system of some sort. Um, for when you do get out, you've got a friend to help you, or a family member to help you. And have a vision for what you want your life to look like and just keep putting one foot in front of the other and learn, you'll learn that it's going to get better with each day, and as you keep going, process and reflect on everything that you've been through and absolutely never forget and, feel that anger, allow yourself to feel it, but take that and turn it into something positive in your life. Use it as your source of fuel to propel you forward and never backwards. I'm never going to be in a situation like that again, no matter what it takes. And continue to learn, continue to grow, and everything will work out in the end as long as you keep your head on straight and keep looking forward instead of backwards and knowing exactly what you need and what you want.